I enjoy working with gifted kids. I enjoy working with kids, period. And so I've been teaching about 35 years. It sounds like a long time. A lot longer than I do. That's a long time. But I love it, and I love working with gifted students. I like working with their parents, although working with their parents can be a little more challenging because many of them are gifted themselves, and so can be very intense. Today we're going to talk about 3 different things. 1, the power of the word yet. 2, we're going to talk about questioning strategies and the value that questions have in a classroom. And 3, we're going to talk about that visual spatial, that non-verbal identifying learner, that kid that you have in your classroom that probably academically isn't doing very well, and maybe really struggling. And yet, you look at that child and think, okay, wait a minute, you've just told me that this child is gifted. I don't see it. So let's talk about that kid and the things that you can do to support that learner in the classroom and help them be a better student for you. So I'm going to take a minute and just ask you grade levels that you work with. We'll start over here.
Beth Laura works in 5th grade.
5th grade?
Yeah. And I do the GT program mostly to.
Okay.
I'm the GT person and school counselor at
Pre-K 5. Okay.
Classroom cluster for
3rd grade.
Classroom cluster 4th grade.
4th grade.
classroom cluster 5th grade.
5th grade. Gee, it's lined up quite nicely. And you're not going to be classroom cluster 6th grade, so that's the next thing.
So my mind. I work 3rd.
3rd through 5th? Okay. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is, again, that term yet, and the value of growth mindset. And I know that growth mindset is something that everybody is talking about today. And I love it, but I also want us to be realistic when we're talking about growth mindset with kids. I don't ever want us to get the misunderstanding that, yes, it is possible for me to be great at everything if I just try hard enough. Because that's not true. We all know that it would not matter how hard I tried, I am never going to be a world-famous novelist. Not. It isn't who I am. So I can become better at writing. I can become a stronger writer. I can become a richer writer. But I'm not going to be a novelist. It's not who I am. What we want kids to understand is, 1, that perseverance is important. And that concept of, I may not know it now, but I could still learn it. I could still get better at it. And the idea of the concept of yet. I was in a classroom recently, and a young man came up to the teacher. He was so stressed. He had his paper in his hand, and it was crumbling in his fingers. And he walked up to his teacher and he said, I don't get it. And she looked at him and she smiled and she said, you're missing a word. And he looked at her and he smiled back at her and he took a deep breath. And he relaxed and he said, I don't get this yet. And she said, you're right. So how can I support you? She took a very stressful situation, a child who was ready to burst, and dropped it down. And calmed him in that realization that, no, you're right, you don't know how to do this yet. How can I support you? Helping kids understand that there's a difference between being knowledgeable and being knowledge-able. I don't need kids to just be knowledgeable. Because if it's just acquiring all the knowledge we have in the world, they're never going to make it. They're never going to make it. I need them to be knowledge-able. I need them to be able to figure out what they know and what they don't know. And one of the things that we do is we talk about this bridge. And I'm going to show you this video clip because it is the best way I've ever found to have someone understand this. That's all well and good, but kids don't understand that. They don't get it. That's why I like this part.
The gap between the two brain cells is tiny. That doesn't mean it's straightforward for a signal to get from one side to the other. For us, it's like crossing a deep ravine.
I asked kids to notice that they have tools. They got tools with them to be successful.
And getting from one side to the other usually is something else what we learn.
And I also asked them, the first time you threw that, did you think it worked, or did you have to throw it more than once?
It's the same when you cross over thing. The first trip across is the hardest. Having crossed over the once, journeys across get easier and easier. And a simple thing happens when we learn something. To start with, learning is difficult.
And I need to reinforce that with gifted kids. Learning is not easy. It's okay that it's not easy.
As the signal crosses the brain cells are given instructions. Time we make the crossing over and over again, it becomes effortless. We can do it whenever we like.
So when I talk to students, we talk about, so tell me, how's your bridge? How's your bridge? When I see a student who has seemingly mastered, they got it, I'll say, you know what? Looks like this bridge is pretty well built. Time to move on to another bridge. Time to move on. Or maybe I have a student who'll come to me and he'll go, I didn't know the bridge work was grounded. Because it's just not connecting for me. I'm just not getting it. It's an analogy that kids can understand. They get what I'm talking about when I say, how's your bridge? How are you doing? Are you ready to move on? I want them to understand the power of that word yet. You will get the bridge built. You just don't have it built yet. So I love this poem by Emily Dickinson because it really crystallizes the fact that hope and yet are fragile. And it's very easy to dash someone's hopes, just as it is very easy to crush someone's yet. And I want to be sure we remember that. We talk a lot about training and teaching kids perseverance. Well, if I've never had to persevere, I don't have perseverance. If every time I've done something it's been easy, I don't have perseverance. And then I struggle and I panic and I give up, quit when I'm placed in a situation where I have to persevere because I don't know how to do that. One of the things that I have to teach gifted kids is how to learn. And people laugh at that and they're like, you have to teach gifted kids to learn? Yeah, I do. I have to teach them the process of learning. Because the process of learning is a process of failure. That's how we learn. We fail. It's what makes us successful. We fail. And I need kids to understand that. But one of the pitfalls that we run into is we praise the person instead of praising the process. Instead of praising what they're doing, we create personal praise. Personal praise doesn't help a learner. Because when you tie it to me as a person and I am unsuccessful, then personally I am unsuccessful. If you tie it to the process, it's easy to say, I don't have that process yet. So think about, because we've all made these statements at one time or another, how do I tie that to a process? Tie it to what, the visual of what you see. So instead of saying, you're a natural at math, these problems didn't give you much challenge. Let's move on to something that will stretch your brain. The process. I want a process. You don't seem to understand long division. You don't understand long division yet. You don't have the process yet. I want kids to understand that it's about the process. It's not personal. And that's hard for learners, particularly because for many gifted kids from the time they were this big, all they've heard is how smart they are, how good at things they are. That's all they've heard. And now they get into a classroom or an environment where they need to struggle, and they don't know how. I don't know how to struggle. I need to teach them that. So, convincing kids that failure is not a bad thing. And luckily right now, we have a lot of commercials out there. I'm going to show you two of them that really help kids connect.
I'm missing 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game in the shot.
And missed.
And missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. That is why I succeed.
So, Michael Jordan is successful because he failed. Because he failed. Because he had to try it again and again. So, when we talk with students, helping them understand that failure is not a bad thing. And this is one that I really like.
Another secret to victory. Fail to make the varsity team. Starts our career as a walk-on. 12-3-13 in rookie season. Lead the league in interceptions. Take a perfect team, well, perfect season. It's been 108 years as a local loser.
And from the side of the stuff savers.
So I asked kids, what's your fuel? What are you going to use to fuel yourself when you are unsuccessful? Because guess what? Failure is an option. And we talk as educators when we say things like, failure is not an option. In the real world, failure is an option. There is not an adult in this room who has not failed. We fail. But the only way to truly fail is to fail to keep trying. Kids need to understand. Failures happen. It's okay. The very first thing I tell parents at the open house is, if I don't teach your child anything else, I will teach them to fail. I will teach them to fall flat on their face, pick themselves up, and realize the sun is going to shine tomorrow. You failed. Okay, what do you do then? What are you going to do to move forward? I have a teacher that I really love, and she tells kids, it's okay to fail, as long as you fail forward. You have to be willing to be unsuccessful. All of these individuals, and I have kids research, so all of these individuals were unsuccessful. They failed. And yet when we look at these names, we think, oh, no. They were all unsuccessful. They all had times in their lives where something wasn't going their way. So, what do I need to do? I need to keep trying. I need to persevere. I need to move forward, as hard as that is. So I asked kids to look at these items. What do all of these have in common? Do you know? They were accidents. Every one of these are mistakes. And it saddens me to think that the chocolate chip cookie might not have existed. That's terrible. Or the potato chip. 3M Corporation makes a mint off of the fact that somebody couldn't make a glue that would come unstuck. It was a mistake. Thomas Edison was asked in an interview that he did years ago, he was said, you have over 200 failures. He said, I don't. I know 200 ways it doesn't work. It's all how we view it. How do you view the mistakes? Are you looking at them as opportunities to say, I don't know how to do it yet? Or are you letting me shut you down? I challenged every one of the teachers in Paradise Valley this year that I work with to build a board in the room that said these words, yet. And talk with your kids about the things that you as a teacher don't know how to do yet, and things that they don't know how to do yet. And I had one teacher go so far as to put up the standards that they were going to be working on that coming month. And across them she wrote the word, yet. Because we don't have these yet, but we will. I went back into one of the classrooms just last week, and they were having a yet celebration. And I said, what is a yet celebration? She said, wait and see. So I stayed for a couple minutes, and each group of kids, because her kids are in tables, got the opportunity to go up and pull off the wall something that was no longer a yet for them. And crumple it up and toss it away. It's not a yet anymore. But along with that, they were challenged to write another yet for the board. So you got rid of one. What's another one that you can write? Another thing that you can add to that you're working toward. Creating a prescription for success is a great way to get kids to understand that, yes, you took the test and you did okay, or maybe you didn't do okay. What's your prescription? What's the script that you're going to write? How are you going to improve this? What are you going to do? Digital check-ins. Allow kids that opportunity to tell where they are and what they're doing without the whole world seeing it. Because for some kids, it needs to be private. We use Google Classroom a lot. And I have teachers who will send their digital Google Docs to their students, and each student gets one, and it has 3 simple questions. How's your bridge? What are you working on? What do you need? And the kids respond. And some kids will say, the bridge is doing great. I don't need anything right now. But other kids will say, I'm building the bridge, but I'm stuck. I don't know how to. I need help with. Okay, great. That's the information that I need, because I can't support you if I don't know what you need. All of these are ways to figure out what do kids need and how do I help them. I have a book that I really like, and it's called The Most Magnificent Thing. Is it one that you're familiar with? Yes? Good. I'm set this down. I'll remember not to move away. Just tell me, stay put. This is really not a good idea. I want to read you this book because it is a favorite of mine. It only takes a couple minutes. This is a regular girl and her best friend in the whole wide world. They do all kinds of things together. They ran, they eat, they explore, they relax. She makes things, he unmakes things. One day, the girl had a wonderful idea. She was going to make the most magnificent thing. She knows just how it will look. She knows just how it will work. All she has to do is make it. And she makes things all the time. Easy peasy. First, she hires an assistant. Next, they gather their supplies, and they set up somewhere out of the way and get to work. The girl tinkers and hammers and measures, while her assistant pounces and growls and chews. And when she's finished, she steps back to admire her work. She walks around one side, and her assistant examines the other side. Doesn't look right. Her assistant picks it up and gives it a shake. Doesn't feel right either. They are shocked to discover that the thing isn't magnificent or good. It isn't even kind of sort of okay. It's all wrong. The girl tosses it aside and gives it another go. She smooths and wrenches and fiddles, and her assistant circles and tugs and wags. And when she's finished, she stands up and takes a long look at it, and her assistant gives it another nudge. The thing is still wrong. She decides to try again. The girl saws and glues and adjusts, and she stands and examines and stares, and she twists and tweaks and fastens, and she fixes and straightens and studies. And she tries all different ways to make it better. She makes it square, she makes it round, she gives it legs, she adds an antenna, she makes it fuzzy, she makes it long, short, rough, smooth, big, small. One even smells of stinky cheese. But none of them are magnificent. Her hard work attracts a few admirers, but they don't understand. They can't see the magnificent thing that she has in her mind. She gets mad. The angrier she gets, the faster she works. She smashes things into pieces and jams parts together and pummels little bits in. Her hands feel too big to work, and her brain is all too full of not right things. If only this thing would work. Crunch. The pain starts her finger, rushes to her brain, and she explodes. It is not her funniest moment. I'm no good at this. I quit. Her assistant suggests a walk. It's not much help at first. Before long, she starts to feel different, and bit by bit, the mat gets pushed out of her hand. And as they stroll along, she comes across the first wrong thing she made. The bad feelings are about to start all over again when she notices something surprising. There are some parts of the wrong things that are really quite right. The bolts on one, the shape of another, the wheel-to-seat ratio of the next, and all sorts of parts that she likes. By the time she reaches the end of the trail, she finally knows how to make the thing magnificent. And she gets to work. She works carefully and slowly, tinkering, hammering, twisting, fiddling, gluing, painting, and her assistant makes sure there are no distractions. The afternoon fades into evening, and finally she finishes, and she alerts her assistant. The pair take a good, long look. It leans a little to the left. It's a bit heavier than expected. The color could use a bit of work too. But it's just what she wanted. They climb aboard and take it for a spin. They're not disappointed. It really is the most magnificent thing. One of the things that we tell kids is, don't get frustrated. Really? Don't get frustrated? That's all you got to give me? Don't get upset. So I ask you, how many of you get frustrated when something's not working the way you want it to? Show of hands, please. Yeah, we all do. How many of you maybe even get mad? Mm-hmm. Anybody ever said, I quit? Yeah, we have. We've walked away from things because, oh, I cannot do this. And yet we say to kids, don't get frustrated. Frustration is emotion that goes with perseverance. We get frustrated. Yeah, we do. It's okay to get frustrated. It's not okay to quit. But it's okay to get frustrated. And it's okay to step away from something and go, I tell kids it's okay to push back. Push back from that table and take a break. Give yourself a minute to let your brain rest. But to say to a student, don't get frustrated, denies a very real emotion. I'm frustrated. Yeah, you are. So how do we help you get beyond that frustration? Because until you're beyond that frustration, you're not going to be able to see how to finish the bridge. For some of us, it just means stepping back for a minute. Others of us need to take a walk. Some of us need to read a book. Whatever it is, please remember, to say to a student, don't get frustrated, isn't realistic. I'm going to get frustrated. If you are providing me with challenging work, if you are providing me with the work that I need, I'm going to get frustrated. And it's learning how to deal with that frustration that you need to give me. That's what you need to teach me. So, I wish that I could change every grading system in the world to an A, a B, or a not yet. If you have a standardized system where you grade on a continuum, you can have an A, a B, or progressing. But I want kids to understand that not yet is okay. I have a group of teachers at a school that they make me laugh because they bought stickers or stamps, and the stamp says, not yet. And when they grade an assignment, instead of marking the number wrong at the top, they stamp it, not yet. They don't put that you missed 17 or that you missed 5. They simply say, not yet. And the kids know that they need to go back and figure out, what do I need to do? What's the missing piece for me? Because for whatever reason, I'm not there yet. And that's okay. So I want you to think for a minute. I'm going to ask you to talk to the people next to you. What's the value in your room of that word yet. What's the value of your kids? Talk to people next to you.
I think it serves also to show teaching and it kind of never works to use kids thinking that on the verge of progressing to my parents
Right. I think it's about the pursuit of excellence. And I think it's just, it takes many hours. And all those things like Bill Gates was behind the computer by the time he was same with all of those people are it's about pursuit of excellence and inside and I'm not too worried about the ABC because we won't do it, so I don't feel that's an issue. I think our kids know. That's the big piece, is that kids can see what's going on. So, when middle school is talking, they're saying that a lot of parents want grades and percentages in middle school because they're used to that. And my quick response was, the kids can tell you, then actually, like a helpful piece of they really know where they are and talk about where the kids are going. And they need to have a regard. It is, and even take a few days ago, sometimes it's just more control for the things that we're asking. So, it's pretty good, they better quality control. As far as rubrics and understanding that getting together and being able to have common expectations across the district as far as like what is proficient, what is exactly. And what is the standard? Are they aligned to the standards? They're supposed to be those kinds of things. So they're important. Right. When you have so many people doing something really fast, because we were tired of that, but there were some major mistakes. So, and where's the what is the actual feedback? I think that would be a question too. Like, Nicole is so good at that. Maybe when there's good conversations at the building level, show them. So this is like, we're noticing that some different. Yeah. She said she don't know that. Creating
We talk about the fact that failure needs to happen. Where failure needs to happen is in your classroom. Because that's a safe place.
And so we're kind of buffer.
I don't want students the first time they experience failure to be a junior in high school. When they're battling for scholarships, when they are battling for place. Sadly, the suicide rate among gifted kids is one of the highest in any group. Because they see failure as a negative. I can't. But Mrs. Brown, you don't understand. I can't fail. Yes, you can, and yes, you will. You can fail. It's okay. Our culture has created such a negative connotation of failure. Failure is, I took a joy, fail to get up and try again. It's okay. You have to fail if you're going to be successful. I cannot emphasize enough the need for gifted kids to understand that concept. Because for many of them, failure is new. They've not failed. They've not been unsuccessful. And then they get into your room. And you're going to challenge them, and you're going to push them, and you're going to ask them to go beyond. I don't know how. I don't know how to go beyond. I don't know how to fail. Give them that freedom to do that. Excuse me. So now we're going to talk about questions. It's one of my favorite topics. Because I like questions better than answers. And people look at me and they say, but isn't the goal answers? The goal is questions. Because if you already know the answer, what happens? You're done. You're done. In your classroom, when someone hands are up and kids are thinking and figuring things out, the minute the answer gets shared, what happens? You're done. The thinking stops because I no longer need to think. You have the answer. I'm finished. But what if in your classroom, instead of hands going up with the answer, what if hands went up with another question? What else do you need to know? How could you move the thinking forward? What's another question? I want kids to come up with questions, not answers. And here's the problem that we run into. Textbooks teach answers. They don't teach questions. Unfortunately, when we teach for answers, we put kids in a very passive form. Because to come up with an answer, I don't have to think, I just have to give you back what you gave me. Coming up with a question is much harder. I need kids to think. And I have students who will say, oh, Mrs. Brown, when I leave your room, my head hurts. It's because you haven't been practicing thinking. Thinking is important. You need to think. So, we talk a lot about rigor. And the fact that we want rigor in our classrooms. So, we group kids, and we provide alternative activities. All of these are things that we are doing to make the content rigorous. But really, it's the questions. It's the questions that we ask that push kids to thinking. That's what makes it rigorous. There is no such thing as a rigorous textbook or rigorous curriculum. They don't exist. What makes them rigorous is what you do with them. What the student does with the content is what makes it rigorous. So, why should we ask questions? One, they're a big part of communication. They can help me avoid making a mistake. They improve my study skills. They expand my thinking. But there's a language to questions. And that's the language that we need to be teaching our kids, because there are lots of different kinds of questions. And kids need to be as comfortable in that language as they are in the other language. There's a language to math. There's a language for grammar. There's a language for questions. So we have passive questions. Those are the kind that are asked of the student. And then we have active questions. Those are the ones that the student asks. And I asked a group of students, a group of fourth graders, to make a list during the day. They were keeping a tally mark. How many questions are you asked, and who asks them of you? And how many questions do you ask, and who do you ask? And we tallied it up. They did it for one complete day, from the time they got up in the morning until they went to bed that night. Okay. They get asked a lot of questions. And I had some students say, Mrs. Brown, I didn't ask a single question myself. I answered a lot of questions, but I didn't ask any. I want them to ask questions. I want them to be constantly thinking in questions. Because when we think in questions, we're moving our thinking forward. So, do you teach for questions, or do you teach for answers? We can find out what kids know. what they feel, what they need. But the goal is, I need questions. Because once I get to that answer piece, we stop thinking. I'm done. I have the answer. I want you to think about a time in your classroom when students ask the most questions. Tell your neighbor. When are kids asking the most questions?
This is what I
So, when do your kids ask the most questions? When they're trying to get out of doing something. Okay. When is another time when your kids tend to ask questions?
I think when you just give the bare basics of what you want kids to do and they're asking for clarification and out of wonderment, like they wonder if they can take it in a certain direction.
Okay. So when my parameters are very open,
Yes.
I'm going to get questions, all right? What's another time?
A lot of kids are looking to do this one.
Okay.
What I have to do.
What is the requirement? It's that child who says, how many sentences? How many words in each sentence? What's the minimum I can get away with? And another time that they ask questions. I need a mental break. Many kids use questions as an avoidance. Sometimes they're used for clarification. Sometimes they are used because I can't wrap my head around it. So I'm asking questions because I don't get what you're getting at. I'm lost. Every time a student asks a question, there's a reason behind it. Sometimes those reasons are good. Sometimes those reasons are not so good. Sometimes I'm just trying to manipulate you. But for the most part, kids ask questions because they want to know. And one of the hardest questions for teachers is that why? 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 We get irritated when they just keep asking, why? Why? Understand that I really do need to know. I need to understand the why behind what's going on. So I teach kids that there are basically 3 kinds of questions. There are questions that are called on-the-line questions. And these are questions for which there is a specific answer. It is right there, written in your text. Look, there's the answer. It's right there. Those are the kind of questions that we just skim for. Then we have what are known as between-the-line questions. Those are more inferential questions. I need to figure it out. I'm going to have to read the information. I'm going to have to make some decisions because it's not stated specifically for me. These are the ones that drive some kids crazy. It doesn't say. You're right, because what kind of a question is this? It's a between-the-line question. Exactly. Read between the lines. And then we have beyond-the-line questions. These are questions that are usually reflective. They are questions that require me to make a judgment. I have to use something other than the text to figure it out. When I ask students a question, I will ask them, what kind of a question am I asking you? Is it on the line, between the line, beyond the line? Why would I want kids to know what kind of a question? So they know what I'm looking for. I want them to understand that when they take an assessment, they need to understand what are they looking for? Don't waste your time searching for a specific answer if it's an on-the-line question. It'll be right there, but if it's a between-the-line question, you're not going to find it.
Do you make them provide, like, explain their thinking in between the lines?
They have to have evidence. So you're saying that, why? What are the pieces that you put together that brought you to that answer? I do the same when you do the on-the-line questions. Why? And on-the-line questions, I will ask them, where did you find it? In paragraph 3, it said, okay, thank you. Explain your answer. But I want them to understand these are the different kinds of questions that you could be asked. We also have quantity questions. So, as teachers, we often ask reproductive ones, where I simply want you to reproduce knowledge that I have shared with you. It's a spit it back to me question. If we would spend time talking productively, we would move further. So, an example would be, what is 17 minus 9? There's one answer. Where if I said to a group of students, can you tell me the ways to make 8? I was in a first grade classroom and I asked that question. How could you make 8? And I got everything from a little boy who said 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, and he got all the way up to 8. I have another little boy who added, I have another one who multiplied, and I got around to Tyler. Adorable Tyler. Who looked at me and he said, 2 cubed. What was the next question he asked in his room? What's cubed? And he proceeded to explain to his classmates that when you multiplied a number by itself, you were squaring it. And I asked, do you know why that is? And he thought for a minute, and he said, yes, because it makes a square. I said, what do you mean because it makes a square? And he said, can I have a piece of paper? And he drew a square. I said, so what is the next one? He goes, it makes a, I got it. Where are the blocks? It makes a cube, and that's what we call it, cubing it. Okay. And his class went from, can you square any number? I said, I don't know, can you? And they got paper out, and they took their graph paper, and you can. Because 2 squared is 4, and 3 squared is 9, and 4 squared is 16. I said, so can you square any number? And one little boy said, if you have enough graph paper. Okay, I get that. If you have enough graph paper. And Tyler wanted to know, well, if you can square any number, then you can cube any number. Yeah, you could. You could. I want them to understand and keep thinking. I don't want them locked into 17 minus 9 equals 8. Yeah, that's a good thing to know. But I don't want them to be knowledgeable. I want them to be knowledge-able. I want them to figure things out. I want them to keep asking questions. Then I need to make sure that the questions I ask them push them forward. When I ask a question that has one answer, we're done. Once that answer is given, it's over. There's nothing else to move forward. We talk about compare and contrast questions. And I like these because I like forced association questions. Questions like, how is an elephant like a turtle? Think about that for a minute. How is an elephant like a turtle? Tell your neighbor, how's an elephant like a turtle?
They both have skills granted to read. They both have tears. They are so they both have blood.
Their ancestors.
They both get very old.
So what are some things that you came up with? They're both animals. Okay. What else?
I started with more parents.
Ears, eyes, legs. They both have 4 legs.
And we start taking it more into what they eat, habitats.
Habitats.
Vertebrates.
Vertebrates.
No.
Genealogies. They both have short tails. Why? You know, they have all kinds of things that make them alike. And yet, we don't think of a turtle and an elephant as like at all. Not at all. And yet, when we start making that forced association, we come up with a lot of ways that they are alike. Asking your kids to do forced association gets them thinking. Moves them beyond. So think about what's a forced association you could ask your kids in your classroom at the end that is related to content. What's a forced association? Think for a minute, and we're going to share it. What could you ask? It is really hard. So what could you come up with? What is something that you could use as a forced association for students with your content? Come on, we can think of one.
We're reading about the frogs eating foods and characters.
We can compare characters, okay? Addition and multiplication.
I said I was eating like character traits.
I was thinking like character traits. Okay? What's another one?
Ours are a city government, like our school setups with
Okay.
How's place value like phonics?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. How's place value like phonics? That's hard.
Schools that have.
Yeah. What school are you at? They don't want to go. What else? Think of the 2 things that you feel are the least alike and ask kids to compare them. The 2 things that you think are the most polarize it, and ask kids to compare them. So that they can learn to see those relationships. Kids get really good at being able to see those forced associations. And what it asks us basically is it's asking me to learn to categorize. To learn to see relationships that are not necessarily evident. So, let's play preference. Preference is a great game. I love preference. Would you rather be a postcard or a letter? Would you rather live in a treehouse or a cave? Would you rather lead or follow? When we play preference in my classroom, I ask kids to stand up. That corner is lead, that corner is follow. Go. And I always get at least 2 kids who are in the middle. I said, nope, gotta pick. But it depends on the situation. Gotta pick. And then I ask the people within the group to explain why. Why do you like to lead? Why do you like to follow? What is it about tree houses that you like? What is it about caves that you like? And then at the end, I always give this option. If you'd like to trade corners, do it now. Because as the kids begin sharing out their reason, suddenly it's somebody who says, oh, I hadn't thought about it. I want to be over there. Okay. That's fine. Preference is hard for gifted kids. Why? It's black and white. There's a choice. There's a choice. And so you'll have a student who will say, so, Mrs. Brown, would you rather be a postcard or a letter? Choice requires complex thinking. In order to make a choice, the complexity of my thinking goes up. When I ask kids to rank order something, the complexity goes up. Because ranking things is challenging. It increases complexity. It goes up again if you ask me to rank it and explain why. So this is a ranking activity. You only have 2 choices, but I'm still ranking them. I'm still choosing one over the other. Personification questions. These are silly questions, and a lot of people don't use them. But I learned a lot about kids with a personification question. So, if blue could talk, what would it say to orange? I asked that of a group of 2nd graders, and I learned that they know a lot about color. Because they talked about primary colors, secondary colors. They talked about how colors are formed. They talked about the emotion connected with the color. And one young man talked about an anger chart. And I said to him, I don't know what you mean. And he said, well, I have this chart where in my mind, I gauge my emotion. And I start out blue, because blue is calm. And I go from blue to yellow to orange to red. And I said, so what happens when you get to red? And he said, you don't want to know. Oh, okay. I said, so what's orange? She goes, orange is almost on the way to red. So if blue could talk to orange, blue would help orange calm down. What would wisdom ask of fear? Personification questions give kids an opportunity to talk about things that are meaningful to them in a safe way. Because they can personify something. Can you think of a personification question you could ask your students that would get at content that you want them to have? What would wisdom ask of fear was a question that was asked in a 5th grade classroom based on a novel they were reading. What's a personification question you could ask? Talk to your neighbor.
So it'd be interesting to see what the kids
Can you think of one? It's harder than it sounds. It's harder than it sounds. I had a teacher who, they're studying the water cycle, and he said, what would a raindrop ask of the ocean? I said, okay. I said, okay, but you teach 3rd grade. Were they really able to answer that question? He said, oh, you should have seen the answers. We underestimate our kids. We make an assumption that they can't do that because they don't have enough background knowledge. They had lots of information. And they had a great conversation about, I had another student who, what would a hummingbird say to a jet, an airplane? What would a hummingbird say to an airplane? This particular little boy was in 5th grade, and that was his personification. And he wrote the whole thing in a poem. Perfect rhyme scheme, wrote the whole thing. It was 3 pages. This was a little boy who had done not a whole lot. Sometimes this gives kids an avenue that we haven't expected. What ifs? The dreaded what if question drives teachers crazy. So what if is simply a reorganization of reality. What if things go up instead of down? But what if we tied it more to history? And what if we said, what if Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had been born in 1840? What if the Civil War had not occurred? What if Alexander Graham Bell had been unsuccessful and created the telephone? There's a lot of advantages to what ifs. Was it possible? So, was it possible for Pocahontas to gaze at the stars through a telescope? It was possible. Was it likely? No, but was it possible? Was it possible for J.F. Kennedy to watch the shots of the first moon landing? No. He was assassinated in '63. He landed on the moon in '69. I challenge teachers to put "was it possibles" up on the board. Start every Monday with a "was it possible" and have your kids search all week long to figure out, was it possible? I have a couple of classrooms that the teacher puts it up on the board on Monday, and there's a jar, and the kids put their answers in the jar, and on Friday, they tally their answers. How many people think it was possible? How many people think it wasn't possible, and why? And then they answer the questions. I have another teacher who does it a little differently. He asks, was it probable? And I said, why would you change it from was it possible to was it probable? I said, because we've been talking about things in terms of probability. And so while it was possible for it to happen, I want them to understand that it might not have been probable. It was possible, but it wasn't probable. And I want them to explain to me why. Moving, thinking, forward. That's all questions are designed to do. Move people's thinking forward. What would have happened if? What will you do when? Can you think of a way to illustrate this? Moving, thinking forward. Creating an idea exchange. In order to exchange ideas, I have to listen. Ooh. Gifted kids don't like to listen. They prefer to do the talking. They're not really great listeners. But in order to have an exchange of ideas, I have to listen to what somebody else said. It's a skill that I have to practice. So, we're going to look at Costa's levels of questioning. Arthur Costa developed these along with and shared them with Avid. So they're Avid type questions. He built a 3-story house. Bottom line is my gathering. That's my first floor. I'm gathering information. These are the kinds of words that lead me to gather information. If I go up to the second floor, now I'm processing that information. And my third floor is an application. I like this because it's clear and easy for kids to understand. It makes sense to them. It's very simple, cut and dry. So, the next step is one that we're going to do together. If you go to the next page, you see a list of other verbs that can be used. And if you go one page further, you'll see an activity that I'm going to ask you to do. I choose Cinderella because it's a story that everybody's familiar with. You could have any text that you wanted that you shared with your students. Provided for you are all of the level 1 questions. These are the gathering questions, the questions that the answer's in the story. What's a level 2 question? Or a level 3 question? So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes. I want you can work with a partner, you can work by yourself, that's up to you. I want you to write for each of those questions, what's a level 2 or a level 3. And you can pick and choose the ones you want to do. You don't have to do them in any order. Write a level 2 and a level 3. You've got about 10 minutes. Oh, yes, there's some on the very back, and there's some here.
You got this. Just because they're just talking. Perfect.
Level 2. Got it? All right, what's your favorite level 2 question? Who's willing to share one? Come on.
Mine was, I wrote something that I heard you talk about it.
Okay.
But I didn't know about this assistant representative.
Okay.
And then I overheard you say that at that time wasn't material, that was expensive. And I was more associating it to that D small, petite.
Yeah. Who's got another 2? That's a good one.
Classify the archetype of the person that granted Cinderella her wish.
Oh,
to
yeah.
go to the ball.
Okay. Gentlemen, got another 2?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Distinguish who the person represents her in real life. So the original question was who's the person that grants Cinderella wish to return the ball? And I said distinguish who the person represents.
Okay.
Cinderella in her action.
Okay. So, one of the students asked, and I want to ask you, is this a 2 or a 3? Does everyone have a fairy godmother? In real life, does everyone have a fairy godmother? I think it's 3. The student wrote it as a 2. And when I asked him to answer the question, because they got to pick the ones that they wanted to answer, he said yes. Everyone has a fairy godmother. And as he went on to explain it, he said just that all fairy godmothers aren't necessarily nice. Okay, moving on. But as he was talking in his paragraph that he wrote, he said, we all have fairy godmothers. We all have people who look out for us. We may not realize there are fairy godmothers until later. But we all have fairy godmothers. And he said, for some of us, we feel like our fairy godmothers aren't nice. But they're still fairy godmothers because they're still looking out for us. He said, a fairy godmother may tell you that you can't do something. They don't always make wishes come true. But they're always looking out for us. Can't talk about that. Somebody who's got a 3.
Do you think the fairy godmother should have granted Cinderella's wish?
Was it her wish a good one? Should she have gotten it granted? Another 3?
Speculate what would happen to Cinderella if the fairy godmother hadn't have intervened.
Supposing nobody showed up.
What do they if Cinderella's mother had been alive, would she have had that?
Would she have married the prince? Do you think another one? Anybody else got one? So, here's my question to you. As teachers, we tend to ask the level 1s. We pull those out of the story. What is the value of asking the level 2 and the level 3 questions? Okay. Push them to go a little deeper.
It invites them to use their knowledge, background knowledge and the knowledge of the text.
Okay. So they have to use the knowledge of the text. They can't just find a literal answer.
It teaches them different ways of thinking. I use the vocabulary itself, learning what it means to speculate and for different ways of thinking about things.
So when Costa was designing this particular set of activities, one of the things he said is, I'm not creating this for teachers. I want students to learn to generate these types of questions. Learn to create a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3 question themselves, so that they learn to drive their thinking. So can you think of a story that you've read with your students, or that your students are, it has to be something that they're fairly familiar with, that you could give this type of an activity to? Maybe a novel that you've just finished, maybe a short story. That they could then generate a set of, maybe as a class you generate the level 1, level 2, level 3. You know, you generate the first level, and then you ask your students to generate the next levels.
Would you describe to them like level 1 as like an on the line, level 2 between, and level 3?
I do, because I think that's easier for them to understand. I tell you, a level 1 question, the answer is right there. It doesn't require a lot of thinking on your part. It's right there. Now, one of the things that I find kids struggle with is framing a question and creating it. And so if you look at that last page that I gave you, nope, keep it going. Didn't print that one. I'll have to. Maybe it didn't print it. That's okay. See, I have it. Oh, I have extras in here. Okay. This is called a question chart, and it's designed to help kids who can't think of a way to structure questions. And what I like about it is the fact that they basically start with one column. So they write a question that uses the word who. Who is, and they finish the question. Who did, who can, who would, who will, who might. And then they go on down. Why is, why did. And the reason that I like this is that as they get comfortable using this, one of these things happens. It's broken into quadrants. So, to answer the first quadrant, it's a lot of memorization, remembering, it's a lot of having understood. The next one over, those are questions that ask them to understand and apply. If you go down, it's questions that ask them to apply and analyze. The last quadrant creates higher order thinking questions. So having kids get comfortable, and in essence I'm providing them stems. I'm providing them those question stems to get them going. Because I have a lot of kids who, they can't get started. They struggle with that process of figuring out, how do I frame the question? It works great for research questions. It's that framing that the kids need. How do I start this? I don't know how to design a question that will get me where I need to be. So this is one that I enjoy using because I think it makes sense for kids. They can pick and choose, and I will tell kids, I need a question out of each quadrant. And I have the quadrants numbered so they know 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'll say I need a quadrant 1 question, a quadrant 2 question, a quadrant 3, and a quadrant 4. So that I'm training them to use questions. And I want them to understand, and I want them to learn to value the question as much as they value the answer. Value the question. All right. We are going to change gears. We already took a quick break, but if you need to jump up and down, feel free to do so. We are going to start talking about that student that we all have in our classroom, that when I talk to teachers, I hear things like, are you really sure he's gifted? How did he qualify? You do realize he doesn't write. right, don't you? I don't think so. And I get that look that they give me of, And part of the problem is the fact that in education, we have equated giftedness with high academic performance. The two are not related. I can be extremely gifted and have very low academic performance. Because giftedness and school don't necessarily go hand in hand. A group of students were asked, did they like school? They came up with a lot of other answers. They came up with answers of, I like my teacher. I didn't ask you that. I said, do you like school? I like spending time with my friends. I didn't ask you that. I asked you if you liked school. And when it all boiled down, we had a lot of students, over 80%, who did not equate school as a place of learning. They didn't put those two pieces together. Because they said things like, I like to learn, but I don't really like school. We connect the two. We see school as a place of learning. These kids did not. So, where's the disconnect? They don't see school as a place to learn. They see school as a place to go until I can do the things that I want to do. I don't want kids to see school in a non-learning environment. So we're going to talk about a group of kids called the visual spatial kids. They are the kids who identify with a non-verbal identifier. You will hear some people refer to them as non-verbally gifted kids. There's no such thing. They identify with a non-verbal indicator, meaning that that's how I picked up the fact that they're gifted. These are pure reasoners. These are kids with problem-solving abilities on steroids. They are reasoners. In terms of pure intelligence, kids that we pick up with a nonverbal indicator are by far the highest. But unfortunately, that ability doesn't necessarily translate into school. Because we look for things that are reading and writing and mathematically connected. And these kids may or may not fit that framework. But there are things that we can do to make them and help them be more successful. One thing is to recognize the fact that most of these kids think in pictures. I had a young man tell me, you teach in words, and I think in pictures. So what do? Well, the question is, are you right or left brain? If you are left brain, you don't think the same way that a person who's right brain does. Now, for most of us, we're a combination. Depending on what we're doing, we're a combination. And we cross those hemispheres very easily. One of the things that we've discovered about kids who are very, very visual spatial is they don't cross those hemispheres very easily. They live on that right brain side. So, what does this kid look like? Well, a visual spatial learner has a vivid imagination. That learner gets the big picture. They see the forest, they don't really care a lot about the trees. They are not detail kids. They're big picture kids. These are kids that see relationships and connections that other people don't see. They see patterns where you may not see a pattern. They recognize and are very out-of-the-box thinkers. They are the kid who makes the statement in class, and you look at him going, did you even hear the question? And then when you give him the opportunity to share the path that his brain took, you're amazed. Oh my gosh, yes, you did hear the question and took me on this wonderful journey. But the problem is that a lot of times we don't have time to go on the journey. And so we don't find out. The other issue with these kids is their emotional intensity. They go from 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds. Emotional intensity is huge with them. And we're not really sure why, but we find that a lot of visual spatial kids, a lot of kids who have strong nonverbal tendencies, tend to have high emotional intensity. So, what do I do? Well, here's the learning profile. The teacher is saying something. They're aware the teacher is saying something, and they're listening, but I need to translate. I need to translate what the teacher's saying into a video, into pictures that I can understand. Now, one of two things happens. Either I can't translate it, so now I'm confused, or I get the translation going and I get the mind moving, and I'm to the point where I'm beginning to understand, and so I listen to the teacher again. But the teacher's moved on to the next problem, and now I'm lost. Oftentimes I have teachers who say, he doesn't process very quickly. It has nothing to do with his processing speed. It has to do with the fact that he's translating. In the same way that that student who comes to you and is translating a different language, and so you give them a little extra time to translate it so they can understand you, that's what this child's doing, only he's translating it into pictures so that he can process it and store it. And then you ask him a question. But he thinks in pictures, but he knows that you only understand words, so he has to retranslate his pictures back into words, which is why sometimes they are slow to answer you. I need to translate, because you don't understand what I'm going to tell you. These are kids who will remember what they see much more than what they hear. Because when I see something, you've already provided me a visual image. I just have to tweak it a little bit so that it works for me. When you talk to me, I have to take your words, create the image, and store it. That takes me more time. There are kids who love diagrams and pictures. They would prefer to read rather than just listen, although they do like to be read too, if they can have the text in front of them. They are kids who will struggle with verbal directions. They can't remember the second or third thing you told them to do. Well, think about that. Why is that? What are they doing with the first item? Making a picture, and you went on to the second item, so now they're listening and they've got the third item and they made a picture, but somewhere in there they missed item number 2. So they tend to skip things in directions. They tend to do things out of sequence. They are very, very whole to part. Very whole to part. Well, here's the problem. Our system is part to whole. How do we teach things? Part, 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 put it together. They don't put it together because that's not how they understood it. They understood it by looking at the whole. They are the child who, when you say, read to chapter 2 and stop, they can't do it. They need to read the whole book and now go back and look at the character as he relates to those first 2 chapters. Because they don't see the character in pieces, they have to see the character as a whole and then break it down. These are kids who like art a lot more than music, and they can be very organizationally challenged. Many of these kids have very poor executive functioning skills. But one of the things that I would ask you to think about is the fact that executive functioning does not mature in an adult until about age 25. 25. And yet our expectation for executive functioning is that what? We expect it from 7-year-olds, from 9-year-olds, from 10-year-olds, from 13-year-olds. It does not mature until 25. And I will be honest with you, there are some people that it's not mature at 25. So when we say someone is organizationally challenged, based on what? Based on the fact that they don't use your organizational system? Then are they organizationally challenged, or you just have a system that doesn't work for them?
Yeah.
This is my favorite picture. Here is my spatial child, and here is my sequential child. Everything has a place. My spatial. This is the kid who walks in your room and his backpack explodes. You always know where he sits because there's just a little mess right around his desk. You always know where he is. That's my visual spatial. So, one of the things that I like to have people do is to think about this is an inventory that you can use to have kids figure out, are they visual spatial kids? And I like inventories because I think it helps kids understand who they are. So this is just an example of one that's specifically designed to look for that visual spatial kid. If you look at the types of things that are listed on that page, these are things that visual spatial kids identify with. These are things that auditory learners oftentimes don't identify with. These don't make sense to them. So as you quickly look down the list, how many of you see yourself? And some of you may look down the list and go, nope, that's not me. That's not even close to me. I'm not like that at all. The chances are, that's not your strength. But here's the problem. We teach to our strength. Even without meaning to, we teach to our strength. So if I'm a strong visual learner, I teach to that strength. Even though I don't mean to. If I am kinesthetic, I teach to that strength. We do it unintentionally. We need to remember that if we're not visual spatial, this incredibly impacts the way a kid thinks and how they function. So, this is a kid who catches on quickly, gets the right answers, but his writing looks like chicken scratches. Can't read a thing he writes. This is a kid who can't seem to show his work, yet he's got the right answer. And part of that is because the way he solved it isn't in the step-by-step approach that you taught it. He merged steps together. So instead of saying to him, I need you to show me the steps, I need you to say, I need you to show me your steps. How did you go about solving this problem? When these kids talk to you, it's often like a rushing river. It just seems to gush out of them. They are kids who doodle. They're intense doodlers. They doodle on everything, all the time. For some of them, doodling is their way to keep focused. For others of them, they're actually doodling the content. I worked with a young man, Zane, who was probably the strongest visual spatial nonverbal kid I've ever worked with. And he was in middle school when he got a call from middle school because Zane was having a problem. Didn't surprise any of us. I got over to the middle school and I sat down with the teachers from the team that was working with him. And Zane is sitting beside me, and I'm going around the room, and the teachers are sharing their concerns, and they don't know what to do, and Zane's failing every class. And we got to his math teacher, and I said, so, he said, he just doesn't seem to get problem solving. I said, really? Zane, how have you done on the last 4 Math Olympiad competitions? I got 25. 25 is the top score, meaning he didn't miss a single problem for the last 4 years on Math Olympiad. That's unheard of. That's unheard of. His math teacher just looked at him and went, why didn't you tell me that? And Zane's answer was simple, you didn't ask me. You didn't ask me. His social studies teacher shared that he doesn't pay attention in class, he's not listening, and she shared at the end of the meeting, she said, you see, he's doing exactly what he always does. Because throughout the meeting, unless spoken directly to, Zane had not looked up from his doodles. And I said, so Zane, may I borrow your notebook? And I turned his notebook around. And I said, so what part of the meeting would you like us to share? Because in his doodle, Zane had every single person that was sitting around the table and all of the information that they had shared. He had doodled it. If you were to look at the paper, it was a perfect representation of our meeting. And he had drawn himself in the middle. Zane's a doodler. That's how he sees the world. Zane is currently in graphic design, working for a very large corporation, making an unbelievable amount of money. Because Zane sees things in pictures. That's how he thinks. So, don't take their doodles away. Let them doodle. They are also the kids who appear to be daydreaming. They're kind of looking off to the side. Some of them actually close their eyes. They're creating a visual picture because that's what they're going to remember. They do not remember words, they remember pictures. So if that's the case, when they're asked to explain things, it's not unusual for them to start at the end and work backwards. They rarely read directions. They just start. They oftentimes stare at tasks, visualizing what they need to do and the process that they're going to take. So, we're going to do an activity today. And I'm going to take this off. All right. I'm going to give you a piece of paper, and I'm going to give you a set of instructions. Please follow my instructions exactly. I will demonstrate. Yep. We're going to share scissors. First thing I want you to do is to take your paper and fold it on the diagonal like this, so that you make two large triangles. With your scissors, cut your two triangles apart. So we're going to share scissors. You can pass around and you'll get more scissors. You're going to cut your two triangles apart. Set one triangle to the side. Fold the other triangle in half so that you make two little triangles. And then cut those two apart. So in essence, you'll end up with three triangles. One big one, and you'll have two little ones, or two smaller ones when you get done. So now you're going to set the two smaller ones to the side, and you're going to go back to the big triangle. Holding your big triangle like this, I want you to fold the point up to the middle, so that it's like this, and crease it, and then cut off that little triangle that you just created. Cut that little triangle off. Put that little triangle with your other two triangles. And make a pile of them. And now you have this piece. Fold it in half, like this. Open it back up. Take your point, fold it into the middle. Cut off the little triangle, cut off the square next to it. So cut off this piece, and then cut off the square. You should have a piece that looks like this left. Take this piece. I'm just down the floor, sorry, I can show you. So hold it like this. Fold down to the point. Start with it like this. Fold it down to the point. So now you have a triangle that's been folded down. Cut off that little triangle. You better. So it's like this. Yes. down. Okay? So now, put your pieces in a pile. Put your pieces in the pile. I want you to hand your pile to the person next to you. Are you ready? Does everybody have? Put them in a pile. And you have 30 seconds. Recreate your square. You must use all the pieces because you started with a square. Make the square again. "30 seconds is up. Anybody got a square?" Here's a visualization person. Yep, she's done. Now you cut this, you started with a square, you cut this apart. You did it. You know it was a square to start with. You have to go backwards. You have to go backwards. Keep trying, don't stop. Don't stop.
It's not that fast.
Yeah. You took a square apart, and now you can't get it back together again. But you know that it started as a square. Anybody feeling frustrated? Irritated? Why won't this work?
This is huge.
What did you cut first? How are we doing?
Jesus. Anthony, did you already get it?
Would it help if you had a square underneath it?
No, I don't want to do it this way.
I will prove myself how to do this. You're getting close.
Mr. Schiff was called
So we have another square, but he was guided. She gave him guiding questions to support him. Adapt. Okay, I'm going to stop you.
No.
No, I'm not done. No, I have to figure this out. We will come back. Oh, we've got another one. No. Sorry, thought we had another one. That's not it. No.
It's closer.
Statistically, 1 in 11.
Mm-hmm. That's about right. That's about right. Because it's estimated that about 1 out of every 10 is strong in visual spatial. Right. Don't feel bad. I have done this many times and I still can't. You'll notice that mine is not assemblable. What is scary is the fact that how fast a visual spatial child can do this type of an activity. They fly and they're done. And we look at it and go, okay, this should not be that hard. I cut this apart. I should be able to just stick it back together. And we can't. I'm going to give you another about 30 seconds. We're going to move on. I know, for some of you, it's going to drive you crazy.
Ladies, you can go ahead and work on this at home too. So.
At least we have grit. But is it fair to say that, like, very rarely is a child all one thing? I mean, many brains work in different.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you could be visual spatial and have a lot of characteristics.
Yes.
This could be a very difficult task.
Could be. Could be.
I mean, it's likely, don't you think, or not?
This is a task that I use to find my visual spatial kids because I do this with kindergartners.
Right.
And it's a really good task to find the visual spatial kid.
Right, because it would pull them out no matter what. But
Pulls them
what
out
if they
no matter
had all those other things that
But
you
if they
said?
had all of the characteristics and couldn't do this, then I'm still going to say they're visual spatial.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Or you get those twice exceptional.
Or you have those twice exceptional kids. Yeah, but I can't put it together. Yep, I know what it should look like, but I can't figure out how to line it up.
Would they be able to like describe it to somebody else?
Typically they can.
Yeah.
Typically they can describe what they see.
That's really close.
So if we think about the strengths and weaknesses of these kids, these are kids that they love to be read to when they can have the time to create the visual movie. But the problem is in a classroom, they don't get that time. They don't have the time to make the movie. They are kids that love games, they love strategy, humor, they get it. They like puzzles. They like figuring it out. Don't give me the answer, let me figure it out. Oh, look, she's got it, she's got it. These are whole word kids. They typically do not do well with phonics. And they are typically kids who are late to read, particularly if they're in a district that pushes phonics. They don't see language in the same way. What they are really good at is learning Latin and Greek stems and building words in chunks, as opposed to trying to put them together phonetically. They will often struggle with traditional phonics. They have difficulty sometimes remembering detail. They're very big picture oriented. They can tell you the big picture with relation to why a war developed and why something happened, but will struggle with naming perhaps the battles, or will struggle with the detail pieces. Now, does that mean that we don't make them do these things? No. It just means that we need to recognize these are very challenging for them. So if understanding and remembering details is an important piece that we need for them, then we need to create some type of a graphic that they can use to help them remember it. They need to be able to make that picture in their head so that they can retrieve that picture. These are kids who typically have awesome memories, but it's a picture memory. So they like to read the whole book and then go back and break it apart. These are the kids who you hand a paper to and you say, okay, plan your story. What? The story's already done. I can't plan the story because it's already created in my head. I don't think about it as the beginning. We said, okay, now write the middle. Now, that's not how I think about the story. The story's already done. So what we need to allow them to do is just write. Don't just write and now go back and reverse map it. And reorder things that need to be reordered. And I used to teach my visual spatial kids, never write on the back of your paper because we're going to need to cut your paper apart and move things around. Because they typically have difficulty with organization. Because the story comes out in a flood. And I need to build little dam breaks in there.
I have a question about how they picture things. Do you think there are some students that can picture the words?
I think there are, but what they're doing is many times they're picturing the shape.
Yeah, okay.
So they're seeing the shape of the word. And that's a strategy that a lot of teachers will use with them. They're seeing the shape. And that this shape used in this sentence is going to be this. So they've learned that. Do we have it built back there? These gentlemen have been working very hard.
Can you repeat what you just said out of
Yeah. He's been building.
20 minutes.
So this is oftentimes what their stems look like. Now this is a student who's using Latin and Greek stems. So he's got 4 stems and she's got... And that's how she's remembering them, but that's how he's remembering it. They drew a picture. Because that's how they remember it. They make puzzle pieces. They illustrate it. Because that's how they'll remember it. They oftentimes think about how the word looks first. Then they attach how the word will sound, and then what the word means. But their first piece is how the word looks. So it's important for them, and important for you to remember, that if you're trying to work with a student to learn to read that's highly visual spatial, if they're struggling with vocabulary, they need to be able to picture. Graphic novels are a visual spatial kid's best friend. Because the pictures are in there. And there are some excellent graphic novels out there. If you're having difficulty getting that visual spatial kid excited about reading, try a graphic novel. Give them that opportunity to try something that you might not like, but they love. Visual spatial writers, they are wonderful storytellers. They have marvelous stories, but they have difficulty getting them down. Part of the reason is that torrent that we talk about moves too fast for them to keep up with. So they get frustrated. They may struggle with sequence because the story just kind of flooded, and now they need time to sit and say, okay, here's the story, now let's go back and reverse map it. Does the sequence make sense? They can learn to reverse map. You will never teach these kids to plan it ahead of time. They can't do it. They don't think that way. It's why, even on an assessment, they will sit and stare at a blank piece of paper. When you say, I want you to plan your writing, they can't do it. They don't know how to do it. They're not trying to be difficult. They really don't know how to do it that way. For some of these kids, the physical act of writing is extremely tiring for them. And so we need to remember that. They like graphic organizers. They need to write and write often. We already talked about using one side of paper. They need the opportunity to get feedback. They need an audience to be able to say to them, wait, I don't understand why that happened, so that they can understand that their sequence may be off. They need to find out what pieces are missing. Just like all kids, they do best when they are editing for one thing at a time. One piece at a time. That makes the most sense to them. If they're needing to edit for spelling, and I tell all kids this, read your paperback notes. And the reason I tell all kids that is because your brain fixes it on the way. If you're reading backwards, you're only attending to a single word at a time. Your brain won't fix it. Read it backwards. So these are just some examples. Use thinking maps. They like thinking maps because it's a graphic. Teach them to use and create picture notes. Understand that that's how he's going to remember that sequence. He can write all kinds of things down, but if there's no picture or diagram, he's not going to remember it. It's not going to hold for him. More examples. So in that ELA classroom, understand, this is a student who's translating. Provide the opportunity for him to see what you're doing. Phonics may not be the best approach. You may need to do a sighted approach. Allow him that opportunity with spelling to visualize the word. What does this word look like? What's the shape of the word? So that he can make a picture of the word that he's trying to create. Other strategies that work. Rote memorization rarely works with these kids. They don't rote memorize anything. You need to teach from their area of strength, which is their ability to visualize. They have incredible memories, but rote memorization doesn't work because I don't have anything to connect it to. And these are kids who need that visual connection. It's great if you can group these kids together. If you have a couple that you are recognizing as, oh my gosh, this kid is a really strong visual spatial kid, put him with another visual spatial kid because they will help each other. They think alike. I think that Google Pics, Google Pictures, Google Clips are probably the best friend of these kids because it provides them a variety of pictures that they can grab. But what about math? What do you do for that visual spatial kid in mathematics? Understand that you're going to need to increase their processing time. They are not going to process and do things as rapidly because they're still changing things into pictures. Rather than have them have to show their work on every problem, ask them to show their work on 3 of the problems or 4 of the problems, rather than every problem. One of my favorite things to do with them is to hand them a paper with the answers. Except I tell them, there are 10 problems here. These are the answers. 4 of them are wrong. Can you find the ones that are wrong? And explain to me the mistake that the person made. They love to do that. Because it's a puzzle. They have to work backwards to figure out what the person did incorrectly. And I get to see their thinking. Because they can figure it out. Understand that output doesn't always have to involve writing. allow them an opportunity to have output in another way. But probably the most important thing is slow down. Give them time to process. I was in a classroom several years ago, and I was watching a particular student, but I noticed that when the teacher would ask a question, the kids would do this. And nobody's hand went up, except 3 fingers would go up. And I'd see 3 or 4 kids throughout the room with this. And the kids would start to raise their hand, and they'd look around, and they'd put their hand down. And I could not figure out, what are they doing? And I asked her afterwards, I said, what is this? She said, it's a W. Wait, I'm not done thinking. And she said, no hand is allowed to go up in my room as long as the wait sign is up. She said, because what happens when I have the wait sign up and your hand goes up? What happens? I stop. I'm done. He's already got the answer. Never mind. I quit. She said, as long as the wait sign is up, I want to value the process of thinking. And she said, the process of thinking is much more important to me than anything else. Give your kids time to think. And remember that that visual spatial child may take a little extra time. It's not going to happen fast for them. Understand that we oftentimes give time tests for multiplication or whatever. These kids are rarely do they pass those. It isn't that they don't know the concept. I don't think that way. If you're finding that their focus is lagging, increase the complexity. Raise the complexity and they will re-engage. They don't need it to be simpler. We get the idea that because they're maybe slower, it's too hard for them. It's not. Raise the complexity. Their brain functions very well with a very complex task. So, let them do. Give them the opportunity for visual spatial breaks. We oftentimes talk about brain breaks, and we're going to take a brain break. And typically, what do we do for brain breaks? We move around. They don't need to move around. They need to do a logic puzzle. They need to build something with tangrams. They need that visual spatial break to give their mind a chance to reset. Now, let them keep journals. Let them use Poplin. Understand that pictures are everything. And that's okay. One of the questions that I get from people is, well, Karen, it's great that this is the way this kid thinks, but the world doesn't function this way. Yeah, it does. We're a very visual society. Do I need to teach them to write? Yes, I do. But do I need to understand that asking them to do it my way isn't going to be in their best interest? So I need to find out how they can share with me. And that means I need to let them reverse map. That means I need to let them draw pictures. That means I need to let their notes maybe look like a doodle page. That means that I need to respect how their brain works. Because just because it doesn't work like yours does, doesn't mean it's wrong. These are kids who love art because it's a visual connection. They may or may not be good artists, but they see art and they understand that piece. I want all kids to be successful. This was an activity that the kids did. They were asked to design a signature for their inventor or their scientist. They were researching those individuals. And they had to include in the signature things that were representational of this person. These are the signatures that they came up with. And the last thing I want to leave you with, Sylvester Stallone is famous for the fact that he wrote an award-winning movie. He spoke the script into a tape player. He didn't write with a pencil, anything. His high school yearbook, he was the most likely to end up in the electric chair. And he went to a high school for special needs kids because they didn't believe he was intelligent. Understand, we spend a lot of time in education saying it's all about the process. It's all about the process. With these children, you need to decide that sometimes it needs to be about the product. What they produce has value. Here's your visual spatial person. She has doodled her notes. We doodle. That's how she stays focused. That's okay. Albert Einstein said, if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it lives its whole life believing it's stupid. Please don't ask students to climb trees if they're a fish. They are brilliant kids. But a lot of times, these are kids that get labeled as unintelligent. He's just, he's just not gifted. Always look. Are you sure about that? Or are you not tapping his gifted abilities? Questions? Go.
So in Colorado, our identification process includes achievement.
And that's a struggle for these kids. It's one of the reasons why I say to teachers, you have to teach this child how to survive in this world. Because the world is not necessarily designed for them. It's why I say, teach them to reverse map. Teach them to take picture notes. Because it's not that they can't get the content, it's not that they can't be successful, it's that they need to get the content a different way.
So maybe they don't get identified, but you just need their names.
And many of them will get identified on a nonverbal indicator. And they'll get flagged as, man, this kid has this nonverbal indicator, but he doesn't have the achievement. That's the kid I want you to pay attention to. That's the kid that I want you to look at and say, okay, he doesn't have the achievement yet. Why? Is it because he is so locked into that visual spatial world that he doesn't have the skills yet to be successful? So I need to put some of those skills in place for him. And I still have people building their puzzles. It's okay.
Trying to get our skills in place.
Yeah, I know. I understand. Other questions? I thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Here.